Hi, okie dokie, so we're on our 5th video now. Sorry it took a little while. I was back at work this weekend, so needed a bit of quiet time in the evenings. Okay, we're continuing down our plan. So now we're up to step 5, adjusting to the new normal, identifying our new needs and goals. Okie dokie, so we're just going to have a bit of a look at what are our needs, a refresher of good old Maslow's hierarchy of needs, which is the model that we're using for this one today. And we're going to go through each of the categories and just have lots of opportunity for brainstorming and thinking. So again, very much an interactive one. If you want to get out the lists that you've done before as a bit of a reference point and your normal kind of pen and paper and things like that, then we can do that together. And then we're going to do a little bit about putting it all together, but the next video is going to be a little bit more detail about scheduling, keeping ourselves motivated, getting the balance right, because obviously we've only got so much energy, particularly when we're stressed, so we don't want to be putting all of this pressure on ourselves unnecessarily. I've read a lot of really great articles recently about how we do feel this kind of need to be very productive and to always be working and working on ourselves and all of this stuff. And it's obviously very important for us to take a bit of a step back, decide what is important to us right now, and give ourselves permission to prioritize the things that really matter, and hopefully to take it a little bit slower as well. So what are our needs? Often in our busy lives, we are worrying about this, that, and the other. We're thinking, oh gosh, what did I say to that person? And what must they think of me? And what am I going to do? And what about work? And what about this? And what about that? And it's just buzzing. But times like this can sometimes be a bit of an opportunity for us to just step back, take a bit of a breath and kind of think, okay, what have I been focusing on recently? And is that really that important? Maybe do I want to adjust things a little bit? Do I want to shift my focus into something that's going to be a little bit more meaningful to me? Sometimes that can be one of the good things that come out of times like this. So we're going to use good old Maslow and his hierarchy of needs. Some of you, I'm sure a good chunk of people will have already heard of this. Basically, the principle here is that we think of our needs as being a bit like a mountain or an arrow, where it's difficult for us to achieve what we would call our higher order needs before these base needs are covered. So physiological needs like getting enough sleep, getting enough to eat, making sure we've got a roof over our heads, the very kind of basics, safety, feeling like we've got enough money that we can afford to get enough food. So we call those our safety and physiological needs, or just our safety and hygiene needs. Love and belonging, so feeling like we belong to a group, that we are accepted for who we are, that we're in trusting relationships that have our best interests at heart. And that's kind of a little bit tied together with the next one, esteem, which is about feeling like we are contributing to that group. And, yes, I am achieving things, I am approved of, I am valued, within the group that I belong to. And then finally, self-actualization, which is kind of like, I like this picture because it's showing, we're at the top of the mountain, we've got to the peak of Mount Everest, and we feel like we've really, we're just kind of living our full potential. And so this is a great model, particularly, for a time like this, because it really emphasizes that although we might have that temptation to sort of say, oh, yep, I really want to be achieving this, that, and the other, and oh, I want to be going 1,000,000 miles an hour, we actually do need to take a bit of a step back and think, well, look, how are my base needs? Am I getting enough sleep? Am I getting enough exercise? Am I getting the right foods to eat? Am I staying connected with my friends and family? All of those things have been disrupted as a consequence of what's going on. So we don't want to disregard those things. This is actually a great opportunity for us to reevaluate how we're going with those, put them further up the priority list, And then if we're finding, yep, you know what, I do have enough food in the fridge, my rent is sorted for the next few months, that's not my concern anymore, then we can start to go up that ladder and look at the next things on the list or on that hierarchy. Okay, so we'll start off with physiological and safety needs. So first and foremost, in a time like this, minimizing risks to our physical health. So making sure that we're on top of what the legal requirements, any laws that have changed, any recommendations around how much distance to have to people, washing our hands regularly, any other PPE or any other things that we need in place to keep us safe. Obviously that's kind of the number one change that's happened for us recently, so for a lot of us that's kind of at the forefront of our attention, but there's obviously a lot of other things as well. So the next one, we'd want to have a look at shelter. You know, do we have a roof over our heads? Is that stable? Is that taken care of? Do I need to contact the real estate agent or the bank to make sure that that feels safe and comfortable for me? And this is very much what we were talking about in the first couple of sessions about creating a safe space and a safe mental space. If we don't feel like we have this safety covered, it's very hard for us to look at anything else. Finances, very similar. Have I contacted the bank if I need to? Have I contacted Centrelink or you know, any other welfare systems that are in place if I need to? Any family and friends, all of those sorts of things. Looking after our acute physical and mental health care. So do I need to do anything to access medication or any health appointments? If I'm feeling vulnerable with my mental health at the moment, do I need to review any of my safety plans, people that might have been more easily available to me? Do I need to kind of have a new look at how that goes, or what I do in those situations? As we talked about in our first couple of sessions, managing stress, managing worry, making that safe mental space for myself to relax when I'm feeling worried or anxious. Alcohol and drug use, I suppose, just as part of that. Daily hygiene, I mean, you know, I know that this is a bit of a blurry one, long term, short term, but you know, if we are feeling so stressed that we're not brushing our teeth at all, then that increases the risk of getting an infection in our gums, and therefore puts a bit of a risk to our physiological health. So just kind of keeping on top of those things. Diet and exercise, so making sure that we are moving our bodies, making sure that we're getting some good nutrients in our diet to look after our health, generally our immune system, all of these things. And I've just put in here safety of family. I know that this technically comes under love and belonging, where, you know, our needs in terms of belonging to our family group or our friend group, but obviously we care so much about our family members and our close friends that their safety does get tied into ours. And if we're worried about their safety, it can bleed over into worrying about our own safety. So this is a really tricky one. I mean, the suggestion I would have is to think of it like the safety videos in the aeroplanes. So when there's an emergency, we're told to put our own oxygen mask on before we help those sat next to us. And I think in these situations, we have to follow the same process. We have to make sure that our base needs are covered before we have the energy to help those around us. So making sure that we have food in our bellies, that we've got that charge available so that we can look after those around us. But we might find that we can't move on to that next step of looking after our more general well-being until those closest to us and most reliant on us are also safe, and we have those systems in place for them as well. So if you would like to, you know, feel free to go back to the previous slide if that gives you some ideas, and just kind of go through each of those and note down which areas you think, great, I've got that sorted. Okay, I can take a little bit of a breath, don't need to be worrying about that for the moment. If there are any areas that are still on your mind, just flag those ones. And if you want to go back to the previous video about managing worry, following the steps through those about how to make sure that we are looking at sort of, I suppose, realistic and practical actions that we can do to resolve those worries about those safety and physiological needs. So I'll just give you a moment to do that. Feel free to pause the video, of course, and then we'll move on to the next one. Okay, so the next one, love, belonging and esteem. So these two are quite closely tied together. They sometimes are called our psychological needs. So feeling that we are in trusting, supportive relationships where our best interests are at the heart of those around us. Feeling included, feeling appreciated, feeling valued. It might be having a social role or identity. This might be, you know, oh yeah, they're the really funny one and they're excellent at, you know, cracking a joke at the right moment. It might be that they're the one that's really tech savvy and I might go to them for advice about that. It might be in our work role that, you know, we feel like we're contributing in that way, we're really aligned to our organization and we're helping them. It can be a wide range of things, but particularly if we have been working recently and the changes that have happened recently mean that our work has changed or even stopped, this is a really important one, where we can sometimes be feeling a little bit of at a loss. You know, oh gosh, that was who I was, that was what I was doing, and now that's all a bit murky now. Even working from home can be a big shift. You know, perhaps we really enjoyed the banter with our colleagues and that was a really lovely, warming part of our day, and suddenly that's dropped off. Where do we get that same feeling from? Is it possible to have a group chat online at lunchtimes at work so that we can have a bit of a catch up with how we're all going personally? I think in my team at work we said that we're going to do a daily picture of our pets, and you know, just sort of nice things like that, just to keep the vibes positive and to ensure that we can be keeping in touch with each other. Also tied up with esteem is feeling proud of ourselves, feeling like, you know, we're contributing, we're achieving what we want to. And of course, when we're stressed and obviously we're exhausted and we're not achieving the same things that we normally would, sometimes that can be a bit hard to process. Maybe there have been disruptions to our studies. There are so many things going on at the moment that might be getting in the way of these things normally. So this is where we're sort of saying, if we can take that step back and reevaluate, okay, well, look, you know, yes, I might not be as ahead in my course as I would like to, but is that really the most important thing for me right now? This is where this can be really helpful. Now, usually we are very social animals, or sorry, not usually, of course, we still are very social animals, and physical touch is actually an important stress reliever for us. And so in a time where we don't have as much physical closeness, that ability to hug and touch each other, we need to look at other ways to try to fill that need for socializing by distance. So that's something that we want to be aware of. And, you know, to even think, you know, that social touch, am I able to get that either, you know, with people in my household? Maybe if we're not a very huggy family, maybe we can find some ways to increase hugging, or, you know, being close to each other, as long as it's safe to do so, of course, just to make sure that we are still having that need met. Sometimes even kind of putting a nice hand on our own shoulder and kind of giving ourselves a hug, or a massage, hand massage or something, can be a really good way to kind of give us a bit of a boost in these times where we can feel a bit isolated. So for love and belonging, here are just a few steps to help us through this one. So I would suggest, again, taking your pen and paper, writing down a list of all of the people that you normally interact with in your life. So family, friends, any clubs you're a part of, any Facebook groups, colleagues, neighbours, acquaintances, and you might even put down people that you would love to catch up with more but you don't get a chance to. And we can think of this as a bit of our tribe. And some people, obviously, with these changes, we're not going to be able to be in as close contact with anymore, and maybe they will sort of move a bit further out to the edges of our tribe than what we're used to. But other people, we might be able to say, you know what, no, I haven't had a chance to catch up with you for a while, but I'm going to make that a priority, or these are the people that I really care about, and I'm going to really put a lot of energy into making sure that I'm catching up with regularly. So once you have that list, you might want to highlight or put asterisks next to the people that you really want to make an effort to stay in regular contact with, and the people that maybe you do want to continue staying in contact with, but you don't need to quite as regularly. So once you have that, brainstorm next to each of those groups of people or individuals of people what some options might be to keep in regular contact. So, you know, and sometimes it might be thinking of ways to continue the sorts of things that you used to do together. So, for example, if you used to do exercise together, it might be a way of sort of joining on to both watching a video at the same time or catching up afterwards. I think that in Australia at the moment you can still go for a walk with one person, but there might be a way of doing your exercise by yourself but giving them a ring during, before or afterwards to keep that kind of routine going. For some people, if you used to go to a pub quiz every week, it might be, okay, well, let's find some online pub quizzes and do those instead together. If it was someone that we used to watch movies with, then there are services like Netflix Party where you can log on and watch things together. So almost kind of thinking, is there an online equivalent or a telephone equivalent that we can continue that same sort of routine? Or are there perhaps other things that we enjoy doing that we would be able to sort of start doing together online or over the phone? If this is something that you're concerned about, having a bit of a look now at what mental health services are available, or if there are people you're comfortable reaching out to if you are starting to feel low. Again, a lot of this is about looking after our future selves as well as how we're feeling now. So doing this now is a really good idea, so that then if you're noticing that you're starting to feel really down, it's already there for you. All you need to do is pick up the phone and dial the number that you've already researched. Just makes it that little bit easier. And so, you know, if you're feeling like, great, I've got my base needs sorted, I've got a bit of an idea about who I'm going to reach out to, I feel like I trust them, I feel comfortable with them, then, you know, you are doing such a great job, and I think that that's fantastic. And maybe this is a time when you feel like I actually do have enough energy that I can reach out and help people around me. So we'll just have a bit of a look at that now. So here are just a few ideas about some things that we can do to reach out to help others. And this, you know, can be a really good one once we've got those base needs sorted, particularly if we're feeling a bit kind of bored around the house. We're sort of like, God, you know, I'm not working, or I'm not working as much as I was before. I don't know what to do with myself. I'm feeling at a bit of a loose end, particularly if we're feeling that esteem part, that social identity, that role that perhaps we got through working is a bit disrupted at the moment. Working or studying or whatever else, or, you know, whatever clubs that we might have ran, you know, all these sorts of things. So this can be a really good way to sort of say, okay, maybe I can't do some of those things I was doing before. Where can I redirect some of that energy? There are lots of people that could use a hand or could use a boost at a time like this. And so having a bit of a look at what we might be able to do can be a good way to use at that time. So first and foremost, obviously, minimizing the risk we pose to others. So making sure that we're meeting those requirements to not be putting others at risk. Offering shopping, cooking, other helpful behaviours to neighbours, essential workers, vulnerable people. If we're a bit stuck about what that could be, one good way is to think, well, you know, if you need it, then chances are others will too. Or perhaps if there's a service that you feel that you're noticing is disrupted, is there anything that you can contribute to that? You know, is there any way of reaching out to your local government or anything to offer some delivery services? Or who knows, you know, everyone's a little bit different in this. Obviously, when it comes to cooking for people or shopping, just being aware with any possible contamination. I know that's a bit of a downer thing to say when everyone's trying to be helpful, but just to keep that in mind and take precautions if required. Lots of people at the moment are doing things that are sort of publicly visible or audible to boost the mood of their neighbourhood. So we've seen videos of people in crowded areas on their balconies performing music for their neighbours, or applauding health workers in France, which is lovely. People making colourful pictures and putting them in visible places to boost the mood of postmen and other people in the neighbourhood. Planning online celebrations, birthdays, parties, preparing or making gifts, you know, doing things to boost important times for other people when it can be a little bit drab at a time like this if we're used to having parties and can only celebrate by ourselves. Starting an online community notice board, clubs, games, lots of things like that. And on the right hand side there's a list of areas that we can do these. Sort of online forums and services, streaming TV and theatre productions. Lots of theatre companies are doing this at the moment, so there are actually loads of initiatives. Feel free to pause the video and look up some of the things on the right if you want some ideas. Sharing your experiences, interests or projects online with a blog or video blog can be another great way to sort of be contributing, to be sharing ideas, all of these lovely things. So just a few ideas there, but please do post comments if you're finding something particularly enjoyable. Joining the Kindness Pandemic Facebook group is a great way to share ideas as well and to see what other people are doing. You know, but yeah, do feel free to share your comments as well, or links to things that you're enjoying. So again, you know, just to touch back on esteem, so very much related to love and belonging. We need to feel like we have a social role and that we're contributing. We are social animals, and a lot of how we think of ourselves is this kind of where we sit in our pack in a way. And so, you know, we have this kind of need to feel like we're meeting our achievement goals. So whether it's housework, childcare, friends' birthdays, work, all sorts of things. And obviously this is disrupted a lot at the moment, so we have to be kind to ourselves and remind ourselves of that. So at the moment, you know, feel free to write down a list of things that you're proud of doing, either recently or over the course of your life. And just take that moment to remind yourself, you know, that, you know, you're doing such a fantastic job just getting through this and kind of adjusting to these incredible changes that we've all had to adjust to recently. Yeah, so there you go. So we'll move on to that last one. So self-actualization is to reach one's potential given our experiences, talents and skills. And most people ultimately want to find a way of using their unique combination of skills, abilities, experiences and passions to contribute in some way to the wider community and perhaps even the global community. So this is kind of the top of the mountain stuff, you know, where we really feel like everything that we've experienced and done and learned and anything that who we are has all kind of come together in this beautiful way to you know, reach our full potential as a human. You know, I like to think about ourselves as being plants, where, you know, you're given this seedling, this tiny little seedling of a plant, and no one's told you what it is. So your whole life, really, you're kind of treating yourself like this plant. You're trying to work out, okay, what kind of plant is this? Does it like very kind of wet, muddy kind of clay-like soil, or does it prefer dry, sandy soil? Does it need loads and loads of sun, or does it actually do better in the shade? You know, what kind of plant is it? Is it supposed to grow really tall, or is it supposed to stay kind of short and stocky? And our whole lives we're kind of working out, okay, what kind of plant am I? What kind of conditions do I grow best in? And, you know, when I'm absolutely at my healthiest and my leaves are most glossy and I'm getting all of my nutrients, what do I look like? What does that, how does that manifest for me? So, and look, you know, this is a lifelong journey, so we're not going to have a nice clear answer in one short video. This is a bit of a life journey, a process. and an iterative one at that. You know, we might find that it's a bit cyclical, that if we are if we're doing something that kind of resonates with our self-actualization goals, we tend to feel safer, less stressed. We tend to feel a bit more confident with, you know, who we are, and it sort of cycles around and around in this iterative kind of process. So, you know, you don't need to have it all sorted now by any means. But you might want to grab your mental safe space lists and your social kindness lists, because these can provide really good clues about what we tend to automatically lean towards, both to look after ourselves and to look after others. It can say a lot about what we value, what's important to us, how do we feel best equipped to help others. So some people might be very practical and they might think, well, you know, I know that lots of the local mechanics are closing or reducing their hours, but I can offer to go around and do an oil top up for my friends and neighbours' cars, and that's something I'm very happy and I feel very confident doing. For other people, it might be, you know, I'm a really good cook and I feel really confident making big batches of lasagna for people. So everyone's going to be a little bit different, and it can give us a bit of a clue about, you know, what do we really enjoy? Where do we feel our skills are? So feel free to brainstorm projects, activities, ideas that you enjoy or feel drawn to or have always wanted to try. Nothing is set in stone, nothing is right or wrong. It's all just kind of exploration and looking for clues. So again, you know, if you're feeling stuck, that's very normal. This is a big thing to be tackling, and I definitely don't want anyone to feel pressured with this. It's more of that, if you've managed to get through all of those other steps, you're feeling like your base needs are looked after, you feel you've got a good group of people around you to keep in touch with, you sort of feel pretty confident about, you know, you're working from home, your self-esteem needs are fine, and it's almost that, okay, how do I use this time to the best of my ability? So I'd follow the steps on the previous slide first. If you're still feeling stuck, I'm going to put a link to a few other tools which are really good for exploring our values and getting a bit closer to what that self-actualization might look like for us, or perhaps not what the end goal is, but what direction we can be heading in. If any of this is overwhelming, that is completely fine, completely normal. It just means that, you know, we stick to our physiological needs. It's almost like we don't want to stretch ourselves too thin going for this stuff. We might want to say, you know what, even though I know an idea of what those end goals might look like, I actually know that I haven't been getting any exercise, and I've got to prioritize that first before I look at any of those things. And that's me speaking personally. Radio, so putting it all together. So now you should hopefully have lots of lists of possible activities, skills, projects that you could use to fill up the time, as well as mental safe space, translated worry lists, and anything else that might be bothering you that feels unmet along that list of the hierarchy of needs. So I would suggest going through the lists and almost kind of trying to compile them into the beginnings of what in our next video will be a bit of a timetable or a bit of a plan, so that we can get that balance going. So I would suggest to begin with sorting them through into categories of what is essential. So I need to do this, otherwise there are going to be consequences. So I need to be able to find some way of paying the bills, or at least communicating with the people to work out an arrangement if I can't. I need to be taking my medication. Routine tasks, which, as we talked about before, they might not have immediate consequences, but we'd probably want to be staying relatively on top of them. So, you know, keeping our teeth clean, exercising, making sure that things are reasonably clean and tidy, you know. And then the things that are enjoyable, so social activities, playing games, watching TV, you know, the things that give us a boost to our batteries, that we find relaxing, that we find enjoyable. You might want to go through the list if you're finding that they're all very long and a little bit scary. You might want to say, okay, I know that this list is very long. I know that I can't do all of it, but these are the things that are most important. Those are the things I'm going to focus on. So feel free to do that now. Cool. So that was just a bit of an intro to the putting it all together. The last video will be on scheduling skills, and in that one we're going to go into a bit more detail about some tips and tricks around motivation, how we can plan things to keep that balance, so we're not just going crazy thinking, oh, I've got to get all of this stuff done, that we do have that balance in our lives to look after those base needs as well. Cool. Thanks very much, everyone.